Today I'm going to talk about a couple dream experiences that I've selected just for interesting and teaching purposes for what I want to talk about today. My first dream was over about a year ago, and in which I went into this little white house up a couple stairs, a little small porch, and inside there's a little living room, and there was a bunch of children, boys and girls, and they were shaking dolls at me, and they were mumbling. And this mumbling was kind of repetitive and disconcerting, and sort of put me almost in a trance and made me more unaware in my dream. I went into the other area of the house. There were men in a kitchen, about 5 or 6 black men, ranging from about 40 to 60 years of age, and the yellow, they had jaundice. The white part of the sclera of their eye was yellowed. One man had asked me about the children, saying, "They're annoying, aren't they?" And my response was kind of nonchalant because I didn't want to offend them. I was just said something like, "Oh, they're a little different or interesting or something." And Bearheart said that this was to interview or to gauge the level of my resistance or my consciousness. There was sort of almost like a house party type atmosphere, and they asked me if I wanted a drink, and at first I said no. I felt a little uneasy in their company, but then when they offered again, um, they gave me a Coca-Cola, and he said that he had put lemon in it, which I normally don't like. And so I warily took a small little sip, and in doing so, I got a lemon seed in my mouth, and I spit it back into the can with a bit of the pop. And the guys were totally eyeballing me, all looking at me, taking a little bit too much interest in what I was doing. After that, I got dragged after I felt like I couldn't move my limbs, but I became more lucid at this point, and a door across from the kitchen flew open to this sort of bathroom area, but it wasn't a bathroom because there was no toilet. It was just all white tiles with old grout on the walls and on the floor. And in the floor there was a drain rinse hole. And I started getting dragged closer to this sort of black swirling drain hole. I started to feel dread and felt like that they were going to be dragging my spirit away. And on their faces, they looked hungry and gleeful, and had an expectant look on their face. Then I became almost panicky, and even though I couldn't move my arms, I brought forth a point of light with my mind and tried to make a banishing pentagram, but this did not work. I was totally immobilized. And Bearheart told me that this is because they likely have physical bodies as a human, that they're probably incarnate right now beings, and this makes sense since a banishing pentagram will return spirit from the material back to spirit, but if they have bodies and that they're attached to, this is not going to be very helpful. And the bonds that they had on me were really tight, and I heard a voice whisper in my ear, kind of like, "Be a bear," because I had just been very, very recently initiated to the Bear Clan at this point. And as I was reminded of this, I did shift into my astral bear form, and I had ripped through the invisible bonds that they had on me, and it was almost like silk, sheer fabric. And this is why we wrap our tools like our athame in silk fabric, because it can hold a charge. It can hold your energy. So I saw the group visibly step back as I took a step towards them in this form. But then as I remained in their presence, I started to feel like I was being drawn back towards the sinkhole, almost like being gusted by a bunch of wind. And so I regained more lucidity, and I made my way towards the front door. In doing so, I passed through the children, who were sort of like uh, zombie um, bonded spirits, as being manipulated, and I sort of shoved them out of the way and kicked a few to get to the front door of the house. So this group was likely a cabal of Bakor, which are evil sorcerers that do black magic of a African Caribbean tradition, a group of astral hunters. And what I learned from this experience is that shape-shifting is very helpful in fighting things off, and to have one animal, maybe two, that you're extremely very proficient with and familiar with using, and not to have like a ton of supposed spirit totems or animals, because then you're not very likely to be able to be of any use. Also, to trust your intuition. I felt like something was going on. I felt uncomfortable in the situation. I felt outnumbered. I didn't feel comfortable drinking the drink. I probably should not have done that. And it likely did something to me. To either fight or to escape the situation. Do not accept items from people if it's iffy. Your degree of lucidity equals the degree of your responsible acquiescence or consent equals the amount of consequence that will result from this. And do not worry about offending on the astral realm, especially, or if you are in a situation where you're outnumbered, then this is also a clue that they're trying to dominate you. In another dream I had more recently, there was somebody controlling one of my friends, and as soon as I put on a bear hat, a hat that looked like bear ears and such, as soon as I put on my bear hat in my dream, then the manipulative bad people or spirits had disappeared, and I guess decided it wasn't use tangling with me. Bearheart also says it's important to work with a solid deity or archetype. Stick with mainly one to have a connection with it, to work with one tradition and have a group or order of people that you work with, because being eclectic is kind of dispersing energy in your focus. You can work with more than one tradition, but not to mix it and dilute it. The second dream I'm going to talk about is I was with some friends at night at a restaurant or a bar. I left and I didn't remember where I put my car or if I actually drove there. My friends had already left, so I called somebody else that I knew to come pick me up. While I was waiting, I walked to a place where I was supposed to meet them, but it started to look unfamiliar, and it felt like I had then lost consciousness in my dream. I sort of blacked out, and there was a slight resting or falling feeling. The next thing I saw, I was in a different place, and I was mostly naked. So this was a vulnerable state that they had, dream controllers had put me in, and then erasing my memory and me getting lost. I then walked to another place where I thought maybe I would recognize, but then mist rose up around me, and this was used to change the scene without me becoming lucid that there was something going on. I then lost consciousness again, which the mist was also used as a distraction to misdirect my mind. I was then standing on a bridge over a river, and in the middle of a 4-lane major road or a highway. I then called my friend to tell them where I was now, and then the bridge began to fold up to let a boat through. And I was standing on the crack, which was sort of a jagged triangle shape that fit in the other sort of crevice on the other side of the road instead of being a split straight across the road. And so the person on the phone told me to hold on the best I could. I dropped the phone and I grabbed on the pointed edge with my hands, and I wrapped my legs up around the ledge, and I felt the bridge go up super high, up altitude. I felt I was getting dizzy, and I almost let go because my strength was going in my arms. It became sore and numb and achy. But I told myself I couldn't die yet, and I fought with all my willpower to hold on. With what seemed like forever, the bridge began to fold back down, and I didn't want to get pinched in the middle of the bridge or get the cars to run over me that were now parked waiting to cross on the other side. So I pulled my legs up over the plank, and then I heaved myself over. And then as it closed, I then log rolled to the side of the road. So that was the end of the dream. I had been working with the fairy realm a lot lately. Before this dream, I had done path working where I went to a lake and I saw a fairy elemental or Bogart-like creature. Before that at Yule, there was a mist. I did get lost when I was driving my truck around. It had rose up, and then when it parted, I was at my destination where I was supposed to be, and I got lost in all these back roads when a local gave me bad directions. The mist is associated with the magical realm, such as Avalon, fairies being in between the worlds, threshold, because in between elemental states such as water and air, like steam, which fire and water make the air, the steam, the water, and the air, or a rainbow. And the Druids recognize these in between times like twilight as magical states and beyond worlds. This dream taught me willpower, survival instinct, and self-preservation. I had also recently been inside a fairy ring, which is mushrooms that grow in a circle, and there are many cultural European warnings about not standing in the middle of the fairy ring because you could get lost, as it's a interdimensional realm to the fairy realm or a portal. Fairies can make you lose memory, wander, become insane, lose track of time, and have distortions. However, after the first initial contact, there were no mischievous beings around, and so I feel like it was more archonic, either a combination or just opportunistic, that I was thrown off. Archons want to stop our increase in consciousness and our energetic ability and stop our knowledge, but they like to more hide behind the scenes, like my other Archon attack dream. My third dream I'm going to talk about is I was on a school bus and there was a girl who was my friend who had told me she was a spy, and I was sort of giving her some advice about that. We got off the school bus, and of course I was my adult self. I decided that I knew I was lucid, so I wanted to cut an astral doorway through the scene, and I began to cut with a knife sort of across the top of a doorway and started going down, and bright golden light started coming through it. But then I lost my lucidity, and I was at a different city but fairly local area around here. There was a mall, and we were deciding what to do. And around that area they had a fair, or a sort of a circus, and that she had said that only 10 out of 12 children had been found that went missing in this area, and that they'd been found at a nearby house. And we decided, along with a couple other people, to go and find the other children. So we went. I don't know how we got into the house, but are vaguely reminded it's sort of a dark doorway in a wall. There was it was dark and mazy inside, and I got separated from my one friend. I found machinery in one room that I was supposed to use when I found the kids to get them out of some kind of mental state that they would be in. I instead found a gray cat, and I felt I should take it and put it on the machine. It was docile and it fell asleep. I then found a black cat, and it was bitey and clawy, and I was careful not to get scratched. So I took it and I put it on the machine where it was held fast but it was still awake. For some reason, I felt like I needed to do this. This was probably in later in the dream, I come in contact with the witch of the house, and this was probably her familiars in which I took some of her power away, or it might have been the two children that were missing and being controlled, and their spirits being controlled. Meanwhile, I could see through several walls and several floors where I saw a black ooze come out and turn into smoke underneath. It came pouring out underneath a door in another area. An old woman's voice was taunting me, saying several things like, I shouldn't be here. I hid instead and continued to search for the children because I was not I decided, I was semi-lucid at this point and decided I was not going to leave. In one area, I saw the girl I came with from behind, and she was walking down a corridor. So I walked quickly behind her, and when I got close, she turned around really quickly and in my face, and it was an old woman's face with sunken in eyes and super ashy skin. And she immediately dominated me energetically so that I was stomach down with my feet now pointed down a corridor, which became like a sort of graduated trap door on a slant. She tried to poke my eyes out with a metal large tuning fork. I took it, and then I tried to do the same to her, but it would stop at the surface of her eyes. I would try to increase the pressure and grind it in, but then nothing would happen. She probably had a very strong auric force. I began to slide down the hole and began to feel very incapacitated and started to have mild to moderate fear. I was not very lucid at this point. I said, wait, I'll make a deal. And then the sliding stopped, and she said, oh? Like she was interested. I decided to make up a lie, and I said I would get more children for her, probably from the circus area. At this point, I decided to lie, and the entire time I had been in and out of lucidity, but not at this point. I sort of felt like a loosening of grip on me. I then lost consciousness into blackness. I woke up in a fetal position in what looked like a garage. I was holding a volleyball in a pantyhose that then sort of vibrated, and then when I looked at it, it looked like a skull, and I threw it. I sort of freaked me out a little bit. It was dark, dingy, dirty, and musty in there. And then I opened the mechanical garage door, but then there was a tight fabric, like landscaping fabric, all over the door exit. And it was quite dirty, and there were sort of like roots, almost like we were underground, and it was sort of growing through the fabric. I tore at it and tore through it, and as I tore through it to get out, sausages fell from above where they were hanging. One particular bunch were very red and smelled very bad, and it hit me in the face and the forehead. I heard cackling as I burst into the night and the wet street. I had sort of the impression that she might have been making children's sausages. So what did I learn from this experience? Control of other people's familiars. Get out of mazy or dark territory. It's a trap. This house was belonging to this entity, and to get out of its turf, it decreases its energy and its power. If it follows you, then you can confront them. This is what Bearheart told me as a tip. Do not make pacts on the astral realm. If you are lucid, it is a valid agreement. You're making a pact with a spirit. If you are not lucid and you wake up and remember, tell yourself that you were coerced and not bound by contract. The contract is null and void, and that you are not accountable. What could have happened is I could have promised my own children, other people's children, or even worse. Watch for character admissions. If they say that they're like taking energy, that they are a spy, or they are tricky in any way, because she is the character in my dream that likely led me into the situation. I hope you enjoyed my dreams, and any questions or comments are welcome.